Hey everyone, we're super excited to remind you that next week we'll be starting our coverage of Dune Prophecy. The show starts airing on November 17th, and Zach and I are working super hard to make sure that we get the episodes out to you as quickly as we can, so you can get an extra episode of the podcast for every episode of the show. We can't wait to have another opportunity to talk more about Dune, and we hope to see you there.
Hello and welcome back to the Dune Minute Podcast, your place to dive deep, minute by minute, into the cinematic adaptation of Frank Herbert's world of Dune. As always, I am one of your hosts, Zach.
And I am John.
And we are back on a lovely Tuesday episode to talk about minute 126 through 127.
You got a stinger for us this time, Zach?
I don't. I did not write any for this week. Do you got
no book notes, no stingers?
I know.
You're fucking up.
Hey, man. I got a lot of shit going on, all right?
Yeah, you do.
My life is in a little bit of turmoil at the moment.
I wouldn't say it's in turmoil.
No, this is all self-imposed stress. I've just put a lot of things on my plate as of recently.
Yes.
But not enough to deter us from recording every Sunday.
Except for the weeks that we skip.
Except for the weeks that we skip sometimes. And then we have to go do double episodes or double weeks.
Yep.
So yeah, we're still doing it. We're still trucking through this. So how about we watch or talk about?
Yeah, I was going to say
Jessica and Paul trucking through the desert.
I already watched it. So, I mean, I can pull it up on the TV right now and we can watch it. What if we just live podcasted a minute? And then we just only released a single minute episode. Oh, welcome to the Dune Minute. Oh shit, they're doing this.
There are some out there. The wonderful Gom Jabbar podcast did a watch through of the first Dune movie, where it was like they were like, okay, go to this service or go to this timestamp, hit play now.
Yeah,
and then it was just a live of them watching the movie. You couldn't really hear the movie. It's sure. Like sounds and everything. But
probably smart because of copyright and everything.
But you heard all their commentary as they watched the movie. So you could just watch along with them. It was really fun.
Just do like a Mystery Science Theater.
It was kind of like that. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
That's actually pretty cool.
I think it's on their free feed. So if you're interested in that, go check it out. It's really cool. Not to deter you away from our show.
Yeah, no, please listen.
Yeah, keep listening to us.
Please listening.
They also put out a really, really good show. So
yeah.
But anyways, so we are here talking about Jessica and Paul as they continue to make their way through the rock outcroppings
in the deep desert.
Yep, getting into the deep, deep desert.
I think we're in. We're firmly in it, but
going further into the deep desert.
Hold on, what was it? We have to find the Fremen. You good?
Yeah, that was the last dialogue that we heard.
Yeah,
from Jessica was the last dialogue we heard.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So after the shots of them kind of continuing their side crawly crab walking down the dune,
everything returns to crab.
Yeah, it does. Not to keep plugging other podcasts for free. There's a
not
show
that we have much basis to charge anyone for.
Whatever. There's a show called Secretly Incredibly Fascinating.
Yeah,
that did an episode on crabs.
On carcinization?
Well, that was a big part of it.
Yeah,
how like the evolutionary design of crabs has been independently reached by so many species.
Yeah, no, it's perfect.
It's wonderful.
I can't wait till humans become crabs.
So after their crab walk, the next shot that we get is Jessica kind of looking off in the distance as they're resting on some rock outcroppings. We see her kind of holding her stomach, and I'm assuming this was an allusion to the baby.
Yep.
That's growing in there.
Do you think Alia's talking to her already?
No.
Okay.
No, not yet. Because that is a very defining moment in part 2.
Okay.
So yes, no, I do not think that Ollie is talking to her right now.
Okay. Well,
I can confidently say that.
Okay. Well, fucking
good question.
Fuck me then.
No, it was a great question. It was a great question.
Nope, it wasn't. It was,
but I have an actual answer to it. So the camera kind of pulls back a little bit, and Paul's sitting a little bit higher on another ledge.
He's kind of like up and behind her to the right a little bit.
If this was an Oliver Stone movie, he would have been back and to the left. But it's not. He's back and to the right. That was well worth the 45 seconds it took to Google that. Yeah. And he's also staring off. Paul's also staring off into the distance.
Yep.
But his is much more important than Jessica's is.
It is. But before we get into all of that, I have some things from Art and Soul, and I have some things from the internet as a whole.
Okay. Art and Soul of Dune, heavily referenced, never sponsored.
Yep. Everyone should buy it though, because it's a fantastic book. Like, genuinely amazing. Part 1 or volume 1 and volume 2. But before we get into the Art and Soul stuff, we've talked a lot about, I think it was last week, we talked a little bit about like the rock formations and like the potted out areas from the erosion of the sands and everything. We see that in much more detail here. We saw it in the scene where Thufir Hawat was taking Paul and Jessica to Arakeen for the first time.
Yep.
But cool, fun little fact about this area. So all of these scenes, whenever they're in the rocky parts of the desert, were shot in Wadi Rum, which is a, for those of you that don't know, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Southwest Jordan.
Okay.
Not very far from the Red Sea. In fact, on a clear day, if you're standing up high enough, you can actually see the Red Sea. You can see into like Sinai. You can see into Saudi Arabia and everything. Like, it's
nice.
The closest allegory that I can make that you would understand is if you go to Chattanooga.
I knew you were going to say this.
On a clear day, and you go up to Lookout Mountain.
Yeah, look out!
Yeah, and you can see, Tennessee, Alabama, North Carolina, Georgia, all that stuff.
Yes, local jokes get local work, John.
Hey, I'm on it. Wadi Rum is full of iron-rich sandstone, which helps give the area like its characteristic red sands and stuff. And if you look at it on Google Earth, which I spent way too much time just like poking around in Google Earth yesterday when I was doing all my notes and stuff. Like, I think I probably spent 2.5 hours doing notes. Probably a good 45 to 50 minutes of it was just in Google Earth, just like poking around Wadi Rum and everything.
Did you find this exact rock outcropping?
I was looking. Okay. And I was like, this is going to take way too long. This place is fucking huge. And it is. It's massive.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's iron-rich sandstone, and you can see from Google Earth just this giant red spot in the middle, or in this like southwest area of Jordan, and that's because of the iron and everything.
Okay.
People have been living in this area since prehistoric times, because there's a availability of spring waters on like the eastern slopes of a lot of these mountains and stuff.
Oh, okay.
So
cool.
There is water in this area and everything for people to survive with. The majority of the current inhabitants are Bedouin peoples, which, if you don't know anything about the Bedouins, they're semi-nomadic peoples occupying areas of like North Africa, the Levant, Mesopotamia, Saudi Arabia, or the Arabian Peninsula as a whole. And Wadi Rum was popularized in the West by the writings of T.E. Lawrence of Lawrence of Arabia fame.
Okay, gotcha.
He had a book called The Seven Pillars of Wisdom, written entirely about Wadi Rum, because there's a mountain feature called the Seven Pillars in this area.
Okay.
Super cool looking place. Would strongly recommend you just go Google around and take a look at it.
Okay.
So the film crew and the production team got permission to shoot in this area. it's actually a pretty, popular tourist location because of its, World Heritage Site as a UNESCO designated area. There's a lot of like hiking and climbing stuff, like a lot of, according to various places that I've, researched when I was looking into this and everything, like a lot of really like big climbs that rock climbers.
Oh, sure. I'm sure it's super technical.
Yeah. But it's been used in a variety of other films too.
Okay.
I have a short list. Obviously, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2.
Yep.
But films like The Martian, Rogue One, John Wick Chapter 4, and Prometheus were filmed in Wadi Rum.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Most famously, though, keeping with historical accuracy, Lawrence of Arabia.
I was about to say, like, so you're saying there's a chance that because Lawrence of Arabia is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
We may have seen these exact rock outcroppings in Lawrence of Arabia.
I would say Lawrence of Arabia is probably one of the most, or if not the most influential film ever.
Yeah, it's certainly up there. Yeah.
So much of Dune is influenced by Lawrence of Arabia. So much of Star Wars is influenced by it. So much of like just a shitload of cinematography.
Right, that's what I was thinking about.
Was influenced by the legacy that movie made.
Yep.
So
wonderful movie.
Yes.
Highly recommend. There are certain places, I don't know if this happens in Atlanta or not, but I know it happens out in like LA and where it's like a much more of a movie town, where they still have like 70 millimeter prints of Lawrence of Arabia, that they'll show from time to time. I keep an eye out, like I keep Google alert searches saved for that stuff.
Yeah.
Cause if I ever get a chance to go see one, I really
I would love to see Lawrence of Arabia in 70 millimeter.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anywhere that I would want to see it though, other than Quentin Tarantino's theater that he has out in California. Just because have you heard about his theater?
No, not much. I know he has one. That's it.
He bought this super old, like, I think it was, I might be pulling shit out of my ass here. So to our listeners that are writing angry emails this time at me, don't. But my understanding was that he bought this like super old, super famous theater that was like getting ready to close down, and he like personally renovated it, but made it very like 1940s, 1950s on the inside and everything. It exclusively shows movies on film, like reel to reel kind of shit and everything. Like, and it's just like a super well respected in terms of like the history of this theater and like the restoration of it and everything, kind of like passion project for him. Which, if there's anyone that's going to like be that neurotic about being that passionate about restoring an old theater, I think Quentin Tarantino's pretty high up there.
Yeah.
Because he is definitely that kind of guy where he's like a fucking nerd about that shit.
Sure.
Hardcore. So
I heard that you have to take your shoes and socks off when you go in there.
Yeah, no, he's got to like,
that's the only weird thing about it.
You got to actually like stand in. He's got that Dr. Scholl's thing where you just like stand in it and takes an impression of your feet. Yeah. That's
the only like weird part. But hey, the movies are good.
Hey, the popcorn is fantastic.
Just to make this reference a little more local, the Terra Theater.
Yes,
here in Atlanta. It's a very old theater. Been around probably a couple of decades at this point.
Theater.
Yes, please. We'll not rehash this. I say theater weird. They just recently did a renovation to their theater.
Yeah.
And they kept their film projectors, and they will get their hands on old like prints of stuff. And like every Friday they'll do some kind of old movie in film print in like a special showing. It was really, really cool. I didn't get a chance to go to this one, but the last one that I saw them do was Minority Report on film, which I was like, I didn't even know that movie like shot on film. That's crazy.
That's pretty fucking sick, actually.
Yeah. So they had Minority Report playing up there, and I was like, oh my God, that would be so cool to see. So, yeah. All this to say, if you have a local theater that still does like film prints and showings of stuff, go see it. They're great.
Yep.
There is definitely something special about them.
Yep.
And, shots of this desert and, in this area look great on film. They look amazing.
Back to Dune.
So we get some music swells.
We do.
And we are transported back into one of Paul's waking dreams.
Yep. We're back in Mexico with the sepia filter on everything.
And we're in those narrow canyons, which they probably had a day to film in. They got all of their money's worth. And because a lot of the shots seem like they're coming through the same little passage.
So,
okay, go.
Extra features in the movie, talking about moving gear and everything up in there. And there's footage of the production team, like essentially moving like a small army of people in and out of these like canyons and stuff. And because they're filming this in Jordan, it's so fucking hot during the day.
Sure.
They would do all of the prep and the moving and everything of these cameras and everything at night before the sun even rises, and they would shoot either at dawn or dusk,
right? Because
at dawn or dusk it's already 100 degrees outside.
Well, yeah, we heard that from the PA at the working field at Arakeen earlier in the movie.
Yeah. No, that wasn't just there for the movie. That was there for real life. But yeah, so they, to your point, they definitely had to compress like all of their shots and everything very quickly in all this area. Logistically, it's a nightmare to get cameras in and out of these passageways between the rocks and everything. But B, they're also on a time constraint.
Sure.
So, yeah.
They certainly got their some really, really good footage out of this. Because in the movie here, we are seeing two people in still suits kind of making their way through the rocks.
So we know who they are.
I know.
Because we can see their faces.
Chaw's back, baby.
Chaw's back.
Chaw is back. We get Chani and Paul making their way through the canyon. Chani removes her headgear, and we hear the whispers echo around the sound. I mean, it just says Paul a bunch of times.
Paul.
These sounded different to me. Did you notice like this particular, like, because we've had voices, like many voices echo saying stuff to us in the past.
This is one voice,
but it sounds different.
Yes.
It's like pulsing almost.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I don't know if it has any significance at all, but it just sounded different, and I noticed it.
It's one voice with a little bit of a like reverbish kind of effect, but it's also like an old woman talking.
Yeah. We'll get to old woman.
Yes. I'm breadcrumbing, Zach.
So when Paul takes his headgear off, and we can see this before, but I think it's important to note that he does not have blue eyes right now.
No, he does not. He does not have the eyes of Ibad.
Right. So this is a little bit different from the other flashbacks that we've seen of him, especially like in this area. We've seen him in this area with Chani with blue eyes before. When he got stabbed, did he not have blue eyes?
He did not have the eyes of Ibad during that. The only time we've seen Paul with the eyes of Ibad was
on the ship.
The two times that we've seen Paul with the eyes of Ibad, one was on the ship, one was the horrendous CG.
Oh, that's okay.
Now keep it in, motherfucker.
All right. Fine. So yeah, he does not have the eyes right now. Yep. So this takes place sometime after he's met the Fremen.
Yep.
But not far enough into the future where he's like become one of
by
them.
being around spice.
Yeah. So this is, I don't know, some very, very subtle way of telling this is just a little bit into the future, not a long way into the future. When we get to see what Charles is really kind of heading towards.
Yep.
And it's a tiny little desert mouse. That's what they're looking at right now.
Muad'Dib.
Muad'Dib is just sitting in their like spider web. Yeah, that's exactly what I put. Spider web question mark.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad that I also wasn't confused about why the fuck Muad'Dib's inside of a spider web. I have.
What's your theory? Go for it.
Okay. I have a couple theories. One of them is very like 11th grade English over-analysis coded, and one of them is more practical. No, all right. So let me start off with what I don't believe. I don't believe that Muad'Dib has the ability to shoot webs out of its ass and make a spider web like proper or whatever.
Safe to say, but that would be cool.
But the practical use is that the spider web, like the wind traps, would be used for capturing moisture.
Yep.
The over-analysis 11th grade English class is that this is Paul inside the Frem tent doing his whole song and dance that we saw earlier.
So I landed kind of a combination of those, the second two that you said, not the spider webs out the ass one. So we know that a lot of Fremen technology is based on how animals and other life exists in the desert.
Yes.
I think this is safe. I would feel safe to say that this was the inspiration or where they got the idea for developing their still tents.
Yep.
I don't know how the mouse would construct this thing. Mice are smart. I've seen them solve mazes that would take me a long time. They've done it with ease.
Yeah. Well, you also grew up in rural Georgia, so.
Well, just saying. Does not distract from how smart they are. Just goes to show how dumb I am.
Rats are smarter than mice, though.
That's okay. Fair. So this is probably something that the Muad'Dib can construct, and was the inspiration for the still tents. That's where I landed on this.
Sure.
Collects moisture. We know we saw from earlier with the moisture dripping down the ears of the mouse that's a big thing for them, as is with most things in this desert. So it would not be a very far leap to say, okay, they've developed some kind of like nest area that will do the same thing.
Now I have a question for you, because I went back and watched this a lot.
Okay.
Is there more than one mouse in this tent?
I thought I saw more than one.
What I thought was that it was a mother mouse nursing its young.
That's exactly what I thought too.
Okay. I'm glad I'm not fucking crazy.
I don't think that's right. But I definitely saw that initially.
It kind of looked like it almost.
Yeah. Yeah. TBD. I mean, we're both watching the Blu-ray version of this movie.
Yeah.
I could not tell definitively, but it looked like that initially.
And that's why I would love to have a conversation with someone on the VFX team and just be like, hey, are we right on this?
Yeah. The mouse is just, in this little natural still tent. That's what I'm going to call it and refer to it as.
And Charles just kind of like smiling, looking at each other.
Yeah. And that is where we hear the formal introduction of the old woman voice.
Yep.
Saying, don't be frightened.
Even a little desert mouse can survive.
Yep. And as it says that last half, it morphs into Chani's voice.
Yes. Okay.
Which I thought was really, really cool.
So,
yeah.
Because it is definitively a single voice before it morphs into Chani's voice, I'm curious as to whose voice it is. My theory is that it is the current Reverend Mother of the Fremen somehow speaking to Paul through prescience. And like we've heard before in last week's episode, follow the friend.
Yeah.
But that was the group of voices. So I don't know why we're not in a group here, but we're singling out.
Yeah. That is exactly what I thought as well. So I'm not going to offer any kind of differing opinion, because I also thought that it was the current Reverend Mother.
Yep.
Morphing into Chani's voice. We get from the books that Chani, I can't remember if it's currently or, shortly into the future, but she's also a Sayadina, which is like a Reverend Mother in waiting kind of thing. It's just like a elevated person, specifically woman, in the Fremen culture, but not the top dog Reverend Mother.
And that's a very distinct difference between how the movies portray Chani, because at least in part 2, there's no association with her and the Reverend Mother.
Not,
and in fact, you would argue pretty opposite. But we'll have those conversations when we get to part 2, because there's a very specific scene that I'm thinking of where this conversation would fit perfectly. And I'm pretty sure you know exactly which scene I'm thinking about. I
do, and we'll get there.
Yep.
So
whenever the fuck we do part 2.
So yeah, I think it's the current Reverend Mother, and it morphs into Chani's voice.
Yep.
Because we know that now that Paul has awakened, the voices of the Reverend Mothers, current and past, are something that he has access to. The sense memory and the collective memory,
correct,
of them. So
follow the friend.
Yep. So yeah, that seems to hold a lot of water to me.
Yep. In fairness to this movie, I don't think they knew quite where they wanted to take Chani's character, so leaving that open was probably the smartest thing to do there.
Yeah. We don't sit long with this though.
No.
Because then we hear multiple voices. We're back to the cacophony of voices. And what do they say?
Don't be frightened.
Yeah. So we get to hear that again.
And then we see the knife once again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The same Chris knife. And were you able to tell if this was the same shot used?
It was the same shot. Yes.
So that's twice in as many minutes.
That shot has been used 3 times in this movie.
Oh, okay. Got it. So, all right. They love that shot.
Yeah.
Although, how many different ways can you portray this knife? I mean, if it's important enough, sure, just use the same.
That much I'm not going to. Yeah. And then we hear Chani say, "You'll need to face your fears."
Mm-hmm.
And then we're back in the cracks between the rocks, but this time Paul's with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And then the cacophony is back. A friend will help you.
Yeah.
And our minute ends right there.
Yep. And that's a little bit of a trip for the last half of this minute. Again, no book notes for this week, just because I'm saving them all up.
Sure.
But this was a good minute, and not to spoil my my rating for this week, but I'm enjoying them so far.
We talked last week about how this week was going to be a little bit more involved, and it is a little bit more involved. There's a little bit more going on, so it's a good week.
Yeah. So what do you say we pick back up tomorrow?
Oh, look at that. As always, you can find us on Instagram at the Dune Minute. You can find us on Twitter at Dune Minute, and you can email duneminute@gmail.com if you'd like to get in touch with us. Don't forget, if you're on iTunes or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can also rate and give us some feedback or comments on the show if you'd like. Regardless of where you're listening to it, though, share the show with your friends. We're wrapping up this movie as we talked about in yesterday's episode. So there's a lot of backlog for your friends to go ahead and listen to.
Yeah.
And other than that, I think we'll call it here for today's episode, and we'll be back tomorrow with a Wednesday episode.
All right, cool. See you then.